serve as a reminder of how to turn that pain into purpose. I think it's very important to acknowledge the harm that has been done and to move forward with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding.
I'm a police officer. He's somebody that was, hurt, paralyzed by a police officer, and we are family. And so I have his back, he has my back. And so when we walk in the room, we have no excuses of why we can't bridge the gap between each other.
Where we believe the solutions to community problems are in the communities, and with the right training, the right resources, the right encouragement, those solutions can be more impactful.
You have police officers intermingling with a lot of the kids within the community, and the kids being able to talk to police officers about what their job is. And so this is how you move that pendulum forward.
I always tell you, they can use their voices now. They can lead now, right? They're attracting greatness to their lives, and we're here to support them, to encourage them, and to empower them to be the best that they can be.
When America corrects itself from the inside, it gives us hope that we can solve any other problems that we have.
That's how we stop violence. And we bring in law enforcement to work with our kids, but we truly believe in bridging that gap. This is the summer of healing.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Summer of Healing Fireside Chat. Today we are going to shine a light on community leaders who are working together to promote peace, to reduce violence, and to build bridges between the community and law enforcement. The Summer of Healing was created by Heal America, which is powered by the Stand Together Foundation and Urban Specialists. Heal America was founded by Bishop Omar Jawar. Unfortunately, Bishop Jawar passed away in 2021 due to complications from COVID-19. However, his vision to heal America from the inside out continues to live on. And some of the people who are continuing to carry that torch are here with us today. We're going to begin by introducing Corporal Ryan Tillman. He is a Summer of Healing changemaker, as well as the CEO and president of Breaking Barriers United. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and you can call me Ryan. You don't need it. You can drop the corporal, call me Ryan. I love to be humanized, that's for sure.
I got you covered. Thank you very much for letting me know.
No problem.
And next is Dr. DeForest B. Soaries, Jr. He is the co-chair of Heal America, as well as pastor emeritus of First Baptist Church of Lincoln Gardens in New Jersey, which is where we are today. Good afternoon, Dr. Soaries.
Thank you for having me. I'm proud to always be with these young men who are making an impact all over this country.
Amen. And we also have Anton Lucky. He is also a co-chair for Heal America and the president of Urban Specialists. Welcome, Anton.
I am blessed to be here. This is my brothers right here. This is the OG right here, the triple OG.
I love it.
So anytime I get to spend with the triple OG and my brother Ryan, I am in good company.
Amen. We're going to have a good time today.
Yes.
So for everyone who is watching us, please feel free to share any questions that you may have in the chat, and then we'll take some time to ask the three of them. So we're going to kick it off with Dr. Soaries, just asking you, how important was it to have the Summer of Healing?
It was critical because the Summer of Healing put a spotlight on people who are in the neighborhoods. They're focusing on solutions and not just problems. And they demonstrate the reality that serious problems are solved, at least in neighborhoods, from the bottom up and not the top down. And we're not talking judgmentally, we're talking inside out. Too often, people go off into their ivory towers, they do research, sometimes they even write books about problems. But we believe that the people who are closest to the problems are the ones who have the solutions to the problems. And every now and then, they become local heroes. They have courage, they have compassion, they believe in redemption, and they become a part of the solution that they propose. And the Summer of Healing identified a number of people around the country in cities not known for peace: Minneapolis, Chicago, Baltimore, Dallas, Texas. And from the outside, it looks like there's no hope in these cities where we see violence, where we see conflicts with police. But the Summer of Healing indicated that through local leaders, young men, young women, coalitions, there's the possibility of reducing acts of violence and increasing cooperation between communities and law enforcement.
I love it. It was fun to just watch everyone work together. So Anton, why was it so important to do this now in 2022?
I think it's important because, as Doc said, first of all, it's principle-based and it's bottom-up. You know, it's really relying on individuals who traditionally don't get the shot. You know, most times funding goes to organizations that don't directly work in the hood, right? And so with what we're seeing right now with the polarization that's in our country, there is a need right now for a new approach and a new strategy, principles that's going to grow, heal, and solution us forward. You know, in this narrative, we've had a lot of back and forth, right, left, liberals, Democrats, just all of that stuff. Where is the strategy that says, hey, what we have in common, let's move us together? And I think what you've seen with Summer of Healing, with these individuals working in communities, with law enforcement, with other community groups, to say, we got solutions. Allow us, we closer, as Doc said, we're closer to this issue. Allow us to be a part of the process. So it's important right now that we highlight these type of efforts that's happening around the country, where you see people who are just really doing the work in communities.
Absolutely. It's sowing seeds of hope.
Yes, yes.
So Ryan, I know you traveled around the country watching a number of these organizations and the community leaders work together. How inspirational was it for you just to watch all of this?
So Bishop Omar said it best: inspire people, inspire people.
Yes.
And so for me, being able to travel around the country and seeing the grassroots efforts, like Dr. Soaries mentioned and Anton mentioned, it inspired me to even go back to my own neighborhood and continue those grassroots efforts. Like Dr. Soaries mentioned, a lot of times we always like to wait for people at the top down to give us solutions. But the reality is the people at the closest to the bottom have the solutions that we need. And so I think it's important to get away from titles. And that's why I say, just call me Ryan, because, you know, by identifying with who we are as humans first, it allows us to break down a lot of the barriers. And I'm not trying to be cliche, but it allows us to break those barriers. You know, you get away from the left, you get away from the right, and you start doing things for the right reasons when nobody's looking. So I think by going into these communities, it inspired me and ignited a flame to encourage those locally where I'm from to continue to do that same work.
I love that. Thank you all for what you're doing. Well, the Summer of Healing officially kicked off on Juneteenth weekend. Here's a video to show you how it all began. Heal America launched the Summer of Healing during Juneteenth weekend in Texas and New York.
I'm super excited about Summer Healing. It's a chance for us to empower a lot of change makers who are on the ground, who are working to stop violence in our community.
The movement is elevating community leaders who are working to reduce violence during the summer, bridge divides between the Black community and police, and create mutually beneficial solutions for peace.
It's important to do this kind of work today because there is so much rancor, there's so much division that younger people could end up being pessimistic instead of optimistic. And I think this work invites not only solutions, but it also invites the country to rally around solutions to problems that seem to be impossible to solve.
Due to the Summer of Healing, nearly $2 million in grants will be distributed among 43 organizations in 18 cities, including Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia, Newark, New Jersey, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. The funding will support grassroots anti-violence activities. Dr. DeForest B. Soaries Jr. and Opal Lee are the co-chairs of the Summer of Healing. Dr. Soaries is also a co-chair for Heal America, a movement to fight racial injustice with love and redemption. Lee, who was also known as the grandmother of Juneteenth, is also a Nobel Peace Prize nominated activist and leader. She campaigned for Juneteenth to be recognized as a federal holiday by delivering 1.5 million signed petitions to Congress and walking 2.5 miles in recognition of the 2.5 years it took to inform enslaved Black people in Texas of their freedom after the Emancipation Proclamation.
You know, she's been doing this 20 years, before the cameras, before the holiday. She's been walking like this with small groups of people. And what this says is that if you're consistent, even if you start small, victory comes in the end.
That hope, that's what drives the Summer of Healing. The kickoff was a momentous occasion. As you saw, people had a lot of fun while also working together to create positive change. And you may notice that Opal Lee, one of the co-chairs of the Summer of Healing, she was unable to be with us today, but she sent all of her love. And I had a chance to speak with her and her granddaughter, Dion Sims, earlier this week. Here's what they had to say about the Summer of Healing beginning during Juneteenth weekend.
I was so humbled by it. I was so thankful that we were able to play a part in it. The important reasons for Summer of Healing is so folks can see with their own eyes people working together and coming together for the just causes. And I think that a lot of times the news is always projected in front of their eyes. And so when you all across the country to project the positive affirmations of people wanting to help, wanting to bridge the divide between the police and the community, wanting and giving them something positive to see and actionable alternatives to what is always the stereotype on the news about the divides. I think it was really good for them to see that.
One of the things that made the Summer of Healing so successful was that we worked together with more than 40 community organizations. And we already talked about the importance of really working from the grassroots out. But now I want to address some of the questions that people have in regards to perhaps some of the barriers to creating peace. So here's the first question, and either of you feel free to take it. It says, how can we heal as people when we have misplaced anger or have not identified what healing means to oneself, family, and community?
Well, you know, a lot of the anger is not misplaced. There are black people who are angry because of the history of how black people have been treated. That's not misplaced. There are people angry because of misconduct in police. That's not misplaced. There are people angry because of the violence that has occurred in our neighborhoods, taking innocent young men and women who are now in their graves. That's not misplaced anger. That's appropriate anger. But, you know, as a Christian pastor, I'm reminded that the Bible says, be angry, but sin not. Amen. And you can't just stay angry. Anger is not a strategy. Right. Anger is an emotional response to a real situation. And what we say to people who are angry, let's process the anger. Absolutely. Let's identify the anger. Let's name the anger, but let us not become hostages to anger. Absolutely. Healing is the solution for those who are angry. Absolutely.
Someone also asked, what can be done to heal communities where there's a lot of youth violence?
Yeah, so I think in order to heal a lot of these communities where there's youth violence, it starts with healing. And I don't want to be cliche, but it does start with healing. And the reason these youth are acting out is because there's trauma. And these youth don't know how to become resilient. So it's incumbent upon us to teach them how to become resilient. It's incumbent upon us to teach them how to process that anger. And so by being able to recognize and be able to empathize that these are some real issues that they're going through, I think that's the first step to trying to get them to get beyond just reacting in violence.
Absolutely. And you bring us to the next great transition is because one of the leaders of the grassroots organizations, the HERE Foundation, is Leon Ford. And when he shares his testimony, he talks a lot about the healing that he had to do before he went out and traveled around the world to share a message of healing, of redemption, and of hope. So here's a video of Leon Ford.
10 years ago, I was shot 5 times by a Pittsburgh police officer. I remember...
Leon Ford, a Summer of Healing ambassador, remembers the day vividly. He was shot during a traffic stop that arose from a case of mistaken identity. Ford was left paralyzed.
My heart became hardened. I had so much anger, so much frustration.
After the life-altering experience, Ford became a voice for social change. He began by working through his trauma and going to therapy. After years of doing the work, a friend of his set up a meeting between Ford and Pittsburgh Police Chief Scott Schubert, a 29-year veteran of the force.
To finally get an opportunity to meet, I think we were both suspect. Like, what's the agenda on either side? And, you try to look through the lens of other people, and, try at least so you understand.
I was a little bit standoffish, but I was also open-minded because I wanted to get to know the chief. I wanted to understand. We agreed on many things and we disagreed on some things. But after, maybe almost, months and months and months, almost a year of meeting, we decided to work together.
Ford and Chief Schubert decided to join forces to found the HERE Foundation. It's the first and only nonprofit in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, dedicated exclusively to collaborating with community leaders, police,
so we have to work together,
residents, and city officials to create a safe, thriving community for all.
There's hope for our neighborhoods.
That we will do our best work when we are willing to listen to one another, and we can create real change when we come together while respecting our differences. This focus on listening is the genesis of our name, the HERE Foundation.
As a new community partner, the HERE Foundation's team hopes to fill those gaps by funding and implementing initiatives that build police and resident relationships and strengthen Pittsburgh neighborhoods.
It took a lot of community, it took a lot of love to get me to where I am today. And if we could love every person in community and support every person in community, like you all who have showed up here for me and the people who are behind me, if we could do that for every person in community, imagine how they'd be able to dream and accomplish their dreams.
Leon and Chief Schubert are just one example of many people around the country working to bridge divides between law enforcement and the community. And you hear us continually talking about it because it's one of the pillars of the Summer of Healing and Heal America. So do either of you want to take the stance in regards to explaining why this is such an important initiative to the Summer of Healing? Go for it.
I think it's utterly important to this Summer of Healing initiative because it highlights these principles that we all believe that's in communities, that if we adopt them, that if we push them, if we embrace them, if we embody them, then we can solution ourselves forward, right? A lot of the talks in communities, whether it's police officers, whether it's the violence that's happening in the community, I think we all share this notion that we want it to stop and that we want to find solutions. And so it's just about bringing people together, the proximity, bringing them together to find those solutions. Society will tell us that you either have to be one way or you have to be the other. I think with Heal America and what we're saying is that it's a third way. It's a way that we all can contribute. It's a way that we all can solution forward. And all we have to do is embark on it. I think when you see someone like Leon Ford, a brother who was shot by a police officer, and you see Ryan Tillman, an officer, you see myself, a former gang member, and then an OG pastor, all together, what do that say? That says, in essence, that redemption and transformation, no matter what it is possible, that it is a solution. If we can work together to find a solution, the communities can work together to find a solution. I think that's the most important part of this initiative, this whole Summer of Healing. We understand we need healing, but we have to have healers to do the healing.
And summer is critically important.
Mm-hmm.
Children are out of school in the summer, which means that there are more people out in the neighborhoods.
Yes.
The heat factor in many cities in the summer forces people outside who don't have air-conditioned houses and apartments to live in. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of factors that make summer a very combustible time of the year. Mm-hmm. And when we look back at history, we've had major civil unrest in the summertime.
Yes.
We've had a spike in criminal behavior in the summertime. We have police community challenges exacerbated in the summertime. And so by zooming in on the summer, I think we were able to really identify solutions that if they can work in the summertime, they can work year-round.
And there were organizations across the country that did such great things.
Amazing.
They brought together youth along with the police officers. They had cookouts together. They went and they met at restaurants together. It was really nice to see everyone working together. And even you, Ryan, you traveled around the country, and you've been working really to create common ground amongst organizations as well as police for a while now. So what made you decide to pick up the torch?
I think when I got into law enforcement, I had no aspirations of doing law enforcement. I didn't like police officers. I had some bad interactions with law enforcement. But then when I got into the profession, it really opened my eyes to a different world. And it opened my eyes to realize that we need a world where their police do exist. I've gone to too many houses. I've gone to too much traumatic situations where if an officer didn't step up and intervene, somebody could have been in much worse off shape. But at the same time, I still recognize that there are ways that we can improve. That's why I didn't like police officers, because of my bad experiences. And so when I got into the profession, I'm a Christian man, and I prayed about it, and I asked Christ like what he wanted me to do. And that's when I realized like my purpose in life was to go out there and bridge that gap between law enforcement and the community. So the torch that I carry is one that was given to me by Christ. Mm-hmm. And secondly, my job is to go out there and be an example. Anton kind of alluded to it. If me, Leon, Anton, Dr. Soaries, if we can have these great relationships, I'm going to mention another brother of mine, my buddy named Artie, who received life in prison for murder. And me, Leon, and him are very, very close. We kind of set the example, yes, and we kind of get rid of the excuse for the community for reasons why they can't heal. Mm-hmm. Because if we can heal and if we can work collaboratively together, then it gets rid of all excuses. So that's what I love about Heal America, is that it really sets the tone and sets the example for the rest of the world on how we can heal.
Absolutely. Go. Yes.
And I think what was super exciting about the whole Heal America initiative was, it was innate in the initiative, was that we all agreed that lawlessness, whether it's on the part of the community or it's on the part of law enforcement, cannot be tolerated. And that was kind of the uniting force. You know, I think in most communities, especially underserved communities, they want to know that it's accountability on the side of law enforcement. Law enforcement want to know it's accountability on the side of the community. But if we can say collectively that lawlessness, no matter where it show up at, it can't be tolerated, then you have a uniting factor to push communities forward to find solutions.
And let me tell you something. That's the key to this movement, and it's the key for solving America's biggest problem of division, because the assumption is that you have to fight systemic racism, police brutality, police corruption, and you do. But the other assumption is that you've got to conquer what's called black-on-black crime, gang violence, etc. And what Anton represents is the fact that you legitimately have to do both. Exactly. You can't do either or. Mm-hmm. Right. Because if you solve the problem of police misconduct, you can't ignore the thousands of young people dying at the hands of other young people who look just like them. Right. And likewise, if you only look at that factor, you're not looking at the systemic mm-hmm. issues, which include police misconduct. Mm-hmm. And so it's principles that drive behavior yes. that makes the whole community accountable. Because at the end of the day, we're one community. Yeah. Right. Whether we're kids or cops, it's one community, whether we like it or not. And until the entire community rises to a level of accountability, a level of love, a level of mutual respect and mutual benefit, then no part of the community is healthy.
And I want to say one last thing on that, because Doc just said something very important, too, that we don't glaze over, is principles. That's adopting these certain principles, and I think that's important as it relates to community, as it relates to law enforcement, adopting those principles that move us forward. I don't want to glaze over that, Doc. That's important.
Because the opposite of principle-based activity mm-hmm. is personality-based activity. Mm-hmm. Right. And personality-based activity says, you know, if my man does it, then it's okay. Right. But if your man does it, it's not okay. Exactly. And what the principle says is that irrespective of personality, class, race, income, gender, the same principle applies to everybody.
And I think that's a unique perspective I've had, because I'm in the middle. Like, I'm a man that has seen police misconduct both personally and I've seen it professionally. But on the other end, one of the hardest things I've ever had to experience is walking into scenes where you see young kids that are getting murdered or, you know, overdosing or doing gang activity, and my heart hurts. And so because I see both of it, I'm like Anton said, we can do both. There's this assumption that we can't. Right. There's this assumption that you got to pick a side. No, you can do both. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I think that's where the principles come in, is we will teach you how to do that.
Yes. Well said. So I just wanted to point out the 4 Heal America principles. One is courage, which is going from the sidelines to the front lines of social change. Justice, which is respecting the inherent dignity of each person by protecting their rights equally. And then there are two more that I'm going to look for. I shall find the last two. I have them here. For Heal America, but it's beautiful that we at least have these two right here. Courage, justice, and I believe the other one is redemption. Am I correct, Anton?
Redemption.
There we go. See? All right, perfect. And I also wanted to note, it's so beautiful how all of you talked about your own walks of life and what brought you to this place. Right. Because Heal America is really about bringing different stakeholders together, right. And all of you working from the experience in your life that brought you to this moment. So next I want to show a video of Ryan Tillman.
Dear Heavenly Father, I come before you in advance that you just keep me safe today, watch over me, guide me, just comfort my family as I'm going, just allow me to make it home safely to them. So I ask these things for your son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
My name is Ryan Tillman, and I'm inspired to change the face of modern-day policing. My purpose in life is to bridge the gap between law enforcement and the community. Well, we're so divided right now. People are on the left, they're on the right, and we can't find any place in the middle. As a black police officer, I'm in a unique position because it allows me to be able to resonate with both sides of that coin. The perception of police officers is damaged. There's a reason for that. The fear African Americans have of the police, it's a real fear because they've experienced some type of bad policing. Going to the other side of the spectrum, people don't respect the police anymore. We've demonized law enforcement so much so that we want to abolish the police. I recognize that most police officers are good and have right hearts and right intentions. I also acknowledge that there are still some biases that exist, and we have to be able to figure out how can we fix these biases so that way we can move better as a community.
Oh, hi, how are you doing? Probably. Morning, Maureen. How are you doing?
The fear is real for people, and we can't just brush over it and act like they don't have a fear or they shouldn't have a fear. I can't just show up to my job every day and take people to jail and go home. I realize that I have to go above and beyond and make a lasting relationship with the people I connect with in the community. I want them to start to get to know Ryan, not Corporal Tillman.
My man, come on. Trust me, I get it, but we just gotta also be smarter sometimes. Be safe, bro. Take care. God bless you too.
The faster they can get to know Ryan, the faster I can take away any of those preconceived notions that they may have against law enforcement.
Good seeing you, Eric. Take care. Tell the family I said hello.
That was a wonderful video. And see, before we went into the video, I was talking about the Heal America principles, and I found my notes with the other part. So the principles are courage, justice, love, which is love is believing there is good in every person, and redemption. Redemption is fiercely believing the future will be better than today, that each person can transform themselves and that our country can self-correct and live up to its founding ideals of equal justice, inclusion, and empowerment.
So, Britt, when we talk about love, now let's be clear.
Yes.
We're not talking about mushy, romantic love. You know, as Dr. King talked about, he talked about agape love. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's brotherly, sisterly love. It's loving other people the way you want other people to love you. Mm-hmm. It's mutual respect. It's that level of love. Yeah. You know, the word love has become so distorted now that you have to clarify every time you use the word. Absolutely. So when we talk about making love, we're talking about building the beloved community.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you clarifying, so thank you very much. And it flows right into the next question, which is how important is it to have these principles at the core when you're having such tough conversations with people out in the community?
Yeah, so I'll say for me, I've established my own set of principles on top of Heal America, but it's leading with love, leading with empathy, and leading with respect. Right. For me, that's become the solution. Because if I lead with love, then like Dr. Soaries said, from a biblical standpoint, then you're willing to do something for others that you wouldn't be willing to do for anybody else because you're doing it from a brotherly love standpoint. Right. When you lead with empathy, it means that, hey, I may not always understand what you've gone through. I may not understand the root history of racism or slavery or whatever it may be. But at least I'm willing to open my ears and open my mind to try to empathize so I can feel for you. And then if you have respect for somebody, then it allows you to treat that person like they're your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister. So I think fundamental principles like that, redemptive, all that stuff, that's right there is what kind of governs my life. And if I lead with those things, then it makes more people on the receiving end more willing to reciprocate that. Yeah. But you can't wait for the other person to do it. You have to lead with that. Right. And I think that's the biggest part of it. Right.
So what makes this so countercultural in this historical context is that we're really talking about humility.
Exactly.
And humility is not something that we promote much. It takes humility to listen and not always speak.
Right.
It takes humility to have empathy and listen to someone else's story. It takes humility to admit that you do need healing. And one of I think the great challenges of America is that our arrogance has undermined our cultural proclivity towards humility.
Right.
And until we are humbled,
right.
As a culture, as a country, then I think we're going to continue to fester this animosity, this
right.
warlike mentality.
Right.
You know, because I've got to win.
Right.
I've got to be right.
Right.
And the body politic has been saturated with arrogance and pride, when in fact it's humility that brings people together and that creates strength right. spiritually, culturally, politically, and economically.
You know what's scary about that too is, like, if we're talking about specifically law enforcement and community relationships, a lot of people that have ended up dead was because of a humility thing. It was like, and I've always, I talked to a lot of attorneys, and it's like, look, the time to stop is not the time to argue. If there's police misconduct, get through that stop and let somebody go to bat for you, like Dr. Soaries or something like that.
Right.
But because we have to defend ourselves right away, or we got to step up, or I got to say I'm going to have the last word, it creates a very dangerous situation for all people involved. The person, the civilian that's involved in the stop, as well as the officers. And so it comes back to humility. If we can all humble ourselves and just say, you know, let me take a step back and slow things down, then you're going to operate from a place of wisdom as opposed to a place of emotions.
Right. And I think, too, just to add on to that, I don't want to be redundant, but I think humility allows us to see the humanity in other people, even before the stop.
Amen.
You know, even before someone pulls a pistol or gun on someone in the neighborhood, when we begin to see our shared humanity, you know, we're trying to get people to see that humanity that we have in each other, that's what's most important, man, in all these situations, whether it's a police stop, whether it's somebody in the neighborhood. It's how do we get individuals to see the shared humanity? Because if I see you as a human being, if I see you as my brothers and my sister, then I'm less inclined to take your life. But if I see you as the labels that society puts on us versus them, all of these labels, then it makes me that much easier to exterminate you just at the drop of a dime. And so I think these principles are very important, because these principles say we can find shared outcomes and solutions without compromising what we believe. See, oftentimes we compromise what we believe and we take it left. But if we have strong principles that says, man, no matter what, I can see your humanity without compromising what I believe, then that just may prevent some tragic situation from happening.
So that's what all of these organizations really represent around the country, what Anton's talking about. All of these organizations are focused on solutions because they believe in people.
Exactly.
And they believe in the humanity of people. They believe in the potential that people have.
Yes.
And they don't objectify people. You know, I've been talking for years about the objectification of people. Man. So we don't call people who don't have a place to live people, we call them homeless. Well, homeless is an adjective. They're homeless people. And even slavery, you know, we talk about black people as slaves. No, they were enslaved people. And when we lose sight of the humanity of other people, then we can justify in our own minds treating them in ways that they don't deserve to be treated, in ways we don't want to be treated. So it's the mutuality of our humanity that keeps us humble and keeps us focused, and I believe keeps us pure.
See, Brittany, I was inclined to pull out my phone and take notes, man. That's why I love it.
I was over here. I was like, how can I remember that? I was like, hey, Doc is over there throwing some.
We're going to have to go back and watch the recording ourselves.
You're going to hear me a couple years saying the exact same
yes,
thing.
There you go.
It's free right now, so use it.
He ain't copyrighted yet.
Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned were all the wonderful organizations. And I mean, all of them were outstanding in their own right. And one was when John B. Ponder out in Las Vegas, Hope for Prisoners. And John Ponder is working with law enforcement to help people successfully re-enter the workforce, their families, and their communities. So here's a video of Hope for Prisoners. These formerly incarcerated men and women in Las Vegas are graduating from the Hope for Prisoners program.
It's bigger than just getting a job. That's the piece of cake.
For 18 months, they focused on mental, physical, and spiritual growth to overcome the barriers they'll face when re-entering the workforce, their families, and communities.
Take your hands, and I want you to put them right up here in front of your face. Right up in front of your face. Look at them. Look at those lines in the hands. They may represent a time you were in the Clark County Detention Center.
This program made it different because there's a unity. There's something, you know, I'm from the trenches. I came from the trenches. You don't find this type of unity, this type of support, this type of family where they're going to give you the things that you need. These people are giving you tools to utilize through the structure of your life.
With your hands up in front of your face, can you see me?
No.
Well, neither can you see your future with your past in your face. Hands down. It's over. Now you press on to that call that God has for your life.
Founder and CEO of Hope for Prisoners, John Ponder, had a passion to help people who were incarcerated because he was once in their shoes.
When I came home from prison, there wasn't a mechanism for reentry to help men and women that coming home from prison. You know, I had faced many challenges when I had come home and had to overcome those barriers. I reached out to some people to assist me with that. And when I got up on my feet, again, it was just an opportunity for me to turn around and help some other people.
Since 2009, more than 4,700 people have graduated from the Hope for Prisoners program. While the men and women were incarcerated, Ponder and his team provided assistance through life skills, job readiness training, substance abuse treatment, vocational and educational opportunities, and long-term mentoring. They began working with them while they were still incarcerated and will continue for up to 18 months after their release.
I can't even explain it. It's just been an honor and a blessing from where I came from, and to see the potential that this program put me in. It's not even a program, it's a lifestyle.
Not only has Ponder helped transform their lives, but he also brought together people from all levels of the judicial system, law enforcement, and community in Las Vegas to rally around the graduates re-entering society.
Please keep it going for Mr. Raphael.
Today's graduation was extra special. When you take formerly incarcerated people and train them with the things that they're going to need to be equipped to make it successful in the community, and when they're standing in the headquarters of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, surrounded by judges and district attorneys and just other parole and probation officers, what a wonderful way to welcome them home back into the community.
Man, that gives me chills.
Right?
Wow. That gives me chills.
That's the most amazing thing I've seen in my entire adult life. I was there. I went to Las Vegas as one of my few stops this summer. And I had heard about it. I knew John Ponder. I had read about his program. But to be there in police headquarters with a couple of dozen folks who had spent time in prison and watch them celebrate the very police that arrested them, and have the arresting officers embrace them as humans and partners and family. There's nothing like it anywhere in the world. And I just think that Heal America and Summer of Healing are critical, because a part of our goal is to elevate these kinds of stories, not to impose solutions on local communities, but to find these gems, to find these geniuses and elevate their story for inspiration, for scaling, for replication. Because you give me 50 cities that have this kind of reentry strategy, and I'll show you a changed and healed America.
Right. That right there, that program right there is proof that we all want the same thing.
Right.
Again, we just get too distracted, and we get too, we get the polarization of picking a side is so loud. But that right there is proof that we all want the same thing. There's nothing better for me as a police officer than when I see somebody that I have arrested turn their life around. There's nothing better than that. And it's the same thing where, from a community member, it's nothing better for them to where they get a little bit of grace and mercy by an officer when they may not have deserved it. We all want the same thing. That's why that gives me chills.
Yeah.
And I want to say John program is one of the best I've seen around the country. I don't think no one's doing it like John.
Right.
Probably be, but John has
I agree.
He's killing it all across the board in a number of different ways. But I think also, too, for Heal American, that Summer of Healing, highlighting those individuals, what you just said, just what happens for them and their groups, highlighting these local change leaders who are doing this kind of work. I think it's important, it's important for Heal America to highlight it, because oftentimes when you do this work, you can think that you're the only one doing this work in your city, sleeves rolled up and doing it, but it's power when you see a John Ponder in Vegas, or Uncle JoJo in Dallas, or a Billy in Baltimore. When you see all of these change makers, it gives you power. So I think that's one of those value adds that Heal America bring. We are bringing people together and giving them a network to see other people doing that work. That's important.
Yes.
And remember now, because we're talking about principles, bottom up, inside out, John Ponder doesn't do what he does because he read a book about it. Mm-hmm. John Ponder had the experience himself. Mm-hmm. He served time in prison. He came out of prison. He went through the process of change and became a change maker. Yes. And that's what makes him an expert. You can become an expert in this country without ever having done anything. Mm-hmm. You read enough books, go to enough schools, get enough degrees, and you'll be classified an expert. Right. John Ponder is the kind of expert that we like to find, encourage, support, and work with, because expertise comes better by experience than by books.
Now, before we go on to our next video, I'd like to highlight more of the organizations. So I'm going to ask each of you to describe maybe one organization or two, if you'd like, that you really enjoyed. Like, I know there's ROCA, there's Serve to Connect, there's Howard's Wings, there's Fresno, there's so many. So feel free, any of you, to describe any of them.
Howard's Wings that was the one I went to in Minnesota, Minneapolis. I'm a Cali guy, so we say that wrong all the time, Minneapolis. Anyway, okay. I want to highlight them because I showed up and it was so cool. We ate dinner at, I think it was Ruth's Chris. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yet all these kids from, underserved communities that, put on their best and sat down across from police officers. And that was just the last event. Keep in mind, they went to festivals together. They went bowling together. And they developed these really good bonds with relationships with these officers. Mm-hmm. So much so that one of the kids there after was telling me, like, man, I think I want to go into law enforcement now. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, because not to say that we want to make all these kids police officers, but the mere fact that they were able to open their mind and have a changed perception was critical. And on top of that, because of Heal America, it was able to give these kids exposure that they would have never got elsewhere. To go into a Ruth's Chris steakhouse and see what it's like. I've been afforded the opportunity, as well as Anton and Dr. Soaries, to be in certain rooms that some of these underserved communities don't have access to. But when you get access, when you get exposure, not only does it inspire you, but it also starts to create the plan of how you're going to get there for future generations to come.
Absolutely.
I know a nice organization, man. It's in Dallas, man. It's called Urban Space.
You took mine. I was going to talk about it.
I really want to talk about this other organization, man. It's called the Love Deposit, right? Yeah. It's a brother in Dallas named Uncle JoJo, man. He wears a cape. He's a real superhero to the kids that he serves. So he take kids from his neighborhood and other neighborhoods and take them out to this camp where they have mentors that come in and just wait on these kids. And I was able to visit the camp this year. It's called Legacy Building Retreat. And man, it melted my heart, man, to see these kids all from the projects out here getting waited on and getting taught manners and all this stuff that I think is very important for our kids. And it was one of those experiences that kids leave, they talking about it because it's just adults really loving on them. It's called the love deposit. So it's all about how do we love on our kids, just loving them and loving and correcting them on the things that they need to know. So shout out to that organization, and I really love that, brother. Nice. And I'll be there next year.
I love it.
All right, since he called me the triple OG, I'm going to name two.
Okay.
For very specific reasons.
Yeah.
I want to say something about urban specialists as an example of why Ryan's description is so profound. We are going to have bad incidents between police and communities. We're going to have a shooting by a police officer of an unarmed black person for the foreseeable future. It's not going away. But what happened in Dallas with urban specialists and what Ryan described with these young people is that the more we teach people that one bad incident does not define an entire department.
Right.
The more we have groups that have relationships with the police that can at least isolate the incidents when they happen. It's not just police shooting community. We've had situations where community members have shot police in retaliation. Right. And so it's these relationships that really inspired me to get very close to Omar Jawar and Anton as early as I could, because the Dallas Police Department understands their need to have a relationship with this group. I was approached just last week by a law enforcement person right here in New Jersey who walked up to me, handed me his card. He said, "I need your help." The top law enforcement person in one of our counties. So that's critical. Now, I want to go to Chicago because Artris Williams took me into Chicago in ways I had never seen Chicago before, even though I worked there for 3 years with a major civil rights organization. And I point that out because not only are they doing the same kind of work, but they've carved out Garfield Park, a geographical neighborhood in Chicago. They're focused on the normal things that we've been talking about, but also finding abandoned houses, buying those houses, and fixing them up, dealing with the holistic needs of the people in that community, education, health care. And I think that model is important because we don't want people to think that all we're doing is kind of neat and cool summer camp.
Right.
That all of these organizations have a holistic view of their neighborhoods, and I think Chicago kind of puts that on steroids. And so I want to lift up Brother Williams and his team in Chicago. Now, in Baltimore, I don't know if you know this or not, but in Baltimore, we funded
New Youth Vision Service?
New Youth Vision Service.
Right.
Billy Stanfield, reformed drug dealer. In fact, a drug kingpin, did time in jail, came back out, is now serving the same community where he wreaked havoc as a drug dealer. But most of the funds that he received, he distributed to other organizations in Baltimore.
Wow.
So he funded a coalition of groups working with kids. Chief among them are what they call the squeegee kids, where there was a bad incident this summer. And so we have New Vision Youth Services taking the Summer of Healing funding and using it as an intermediary to help other groups in town who needed the money, frankly, more than they did.
Wow. That's big.
See, you can hear there's so many organizations. In my head, I'm thinking there's so many more.
We haven't even scratched the surface.
I know.
I mean, there's Telos Group. The Telos Group is doing phenomenal work. You know, taking police officers and other activists around the country doing tours about, you know, giving context to why our history is the way it is. I'm excited because I'm going on a Telos trip in the beginning of the new year, and so I can't wait. But we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of all the different grassroots efforts that are taking place across our country.
Yes, they are all wonderful. Good. Oh, did you want to say something before I go on? Oh, okay. And what you did mention earlier, though, you said that oftentimes the leaders of these organizations kind of feel like they might be in their own silos. Right. So it was really nice that everyone got together at the Denver Summit. So here's a video of the Denver Summit.
We're not going to agree on everything. Nobody does. But if you got the same vision, you can make impact.
If you've constantly been in survival mode for the know-how of building a strong foundation.
We're so excited to bring together people across the philanthropic network, the philanthropic sector, who are the most innovative, disruptive nonprofits across the country, to create ecosystems where they can collaborate, where they can create synergy with each other, to really go out and do the work. Specifically the Heal America pod, with so many black and brown leaders that are really tackling issues around diversity, equity, inclusion, and racial justice. We're so excited to have this pod here today.
There's no one that's going to be born that will be like you. There's no one that ever walked the planet that was like you.
Right now, we are dealing with so much trauma within the communities that we live in through violence and all sorts of different behaviors. And so it's important for a lot of organizations to collaborate together to figure out how can we start to end the violence and start to heal one another through sharing each other's hearts and stories behind the trauma that they have.
We've got a lot of people on the ground here who do work in communities around DEI, racial justice, policing, and we were getting together to talk about what's working, what's not working.
It's really good to really see what resources other places had that Atlanta didn't have, and also get to see how solutions are being handled in other areas that we were able to kind of come together, really to educate each other on the works of what's going on and how long we've all been in the work.
It's how we make sure that foundations really sit with the voice. But leaders ultimately have to lead people somewhere, because if you call yourself a leader and no one's following, you're just taking a walk.
And as you can see, everyone, when they were all together at the Denver Summit, they had a great time. Everyone came back and they were so energized and they all had a great time. So we're getting ready to close out today's event, but I want to ask you, what is next for the Summer of Healing?
Well, the Summer of Healing, as you mentioned earlier, is a part of the strategy for Heal America generally. And while we do expect to have an expanded Summer of Healing next summer, between now and next summer, we're going to be nurturing the relationships with these local leaders and among these local leaders. In many ways, Summer of Healing catalyzed a kind of network of people doing similar work in different places who didn't know each other. And we think that Heal America is going to develop resources and strategies to turn a network into a movement. And the movement begins to create organic growth and collective impact. And so we think we're going to see increased capacity among local groups to do the kind of work that we've been supporting and celebrating all summer. We think we'll be able to invade the culture and compete with some of the narratives that offer false choices and give people real solutions. We think people who are looking for optimism and solution-based strategies will gravitate to Heal America. So we'll be using media, social media, and live events to bring people together, to demonstrate what's possible, and to drive these principles as persistently as we can.
I love it. The message of hope and healing is needed now more than ever.
What's interesting, too, real quick, is that last video of the summit, I would be remiss if I didn't say, like, that was Bishop Omar's vision coming to life. Wow. That's what inspiring people looks like. Yeah. That was all these people that came in already inspired, but because they were inspired, they were able to inspire others around them. Yeah. So I think what I saw come of it, it was like all these people getting re-energized. Because before we were able to come into the picture, a lot of these people that are doing this work in and day out, and it can become tiresome, it's cumbersome. I mean, we've all done this work. Yeah. And when you feel like you're in it by yourself, sometimes you don't see an end in sight. But when you go there and get rejuvenated and revitalized, that's what sort of inspires the growth. And so that's what his vision coming together looks like.
That must have been really beautiful to stand there knowing that his vision was coming to life.
Absolutely.
Well, it's especially inspiring to me because, Omar had a tendency to call me late at night, at other inopportune times and talking all this big stuff. And I'm like, Omar, please. I was in a hotel. I think you were with him one time in New York. My wife was there late at night. He's banging on the door, calling, come downstairs, But he was just dripping with vision and optimism and possibilities, and it was contagious and infectious, and our commitment to him required that we commit to the movement, because for him it wasn't about him. It was really about, listen, it goes back to the fact that he was a local guy in Texas who perfected the art of bringing rival gangs together and putting their guns down with Anton by his side. I mean, risking his life to bring people together who were committed to killing each other. And the idea was, if he could do that effectively, which he did, he was the first person in the state of Texas officially certified to do that work. His position was, if I can bring the Crips and the Bloods together, I can bring the Democrats and Republicans together, I can bring racists and activists together. I mean, he just believed that. And to Ryan's point, what we've seen, especially in this summer of healing, is evidence that he was absolutely right. And thank God he was with us long enough to pull together the ingredients that could go into the meal that we call Heal America.
I love that. Thank you both for bringing that up. That was great. I'm seeing now that we have a couple of questions that are coming in, so thank you very much. But I also noticed our time is coming to a close too. So let me get to as many questions as we can. From the audience, please let me.
Join Heal America.
And you can also go to the website. Is it healamericamovement.com? Am I correct? .org. Thank you. Healamericamovement.org.
That's the best way.
Yes, and then you can also sign up to get the email, so you'll get alerts about everything that's going on with the Heal America
operators waiting for your call.
All right, so one person created a comment and a question, but you guys all really kind of answered in the beginning. They said, what are some of the forces working against Healing America? But then the comment that kind of goes with it is, lack of knowledge, ignorance is one of the biggest factors that hinders the healing of America. So thank you to that person who brought that up.
It really is. A lot of people just don't do because they don't know.
Right.
And that's a part of why we're here today. It's why we've developed so much media. By the way, I'm just going to say this. If any of you have noticed, the voice behind all of those videos is her voice.
Yes.
So she kept her face away, but I want you to recognize and join us in thanking Brittany for being. She was the voice of Heal America.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm going to put it out there. She is not using a teleprompter. I'm going to just throw it out there. She is that good.
That's right. But the other thing, Ryan said it earlier, is this. You have to be willing to take criticism.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You have to be willing to go what Anton called the third way, because it's easy to get caught up in one side or the other. And almost every issue in this country has two dominant sides. One side is everything's all right, shut up. The other side is nothing's right, give up. And in the middle we say, no, everything's not all right, but we're not going to give up because humans have the capacity to self-correct and to be redeemed.
Absolutely. And you know, did anyone say anything?
He just summed it up. But it's just interesting what you just said, because I had a memory in my phone today, right, from a conversation with Omar. And it was a conversation where I was asking him about the motives of our detractors and our opposition. And Omar, without blinking, said, don't worry about the motives of the opposition or the detractors. Just continue doing what God told you to do, and everything else will be fine. So I think that's sufficient for what you just said.
Amen.
Just do what God told you to do, and everything else is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Well,
Nehemiah was building that wall, and when the enemy showed up, he said, I ain't got time to be arguing with you. I got to build the wall.
Exactly.
You know, I can't come down, and that's where we are. We just cannot take time to respond to negativity.
Right.
Yep.
So if you want to keep this conversation going, or if you want to follow, just letting you know, go to healamericamovement.org. Also, Anton is going to host a masterclass on redemptive activism, and you can sign up by scanning the QR code on your screen.
I'm not going until I get my book. I'm just telling you, I'm not going to anything Anton does. I didn't get my Summer of Healing t-shirt. I don't have Anton's book. And I'm not going anywhere to do anything until I get
It's on the way. It's on the way. Brianna said it's
on
the way.
We're going to put it in a case, too. We're going to put it in
You got to put some diamonds on that.
Summer Healing is over for 2 months. I don't have a
case.
It's on the way. It's on the way.
We're doing a case for him.
He's so funny. There's also a link in the chat. Do you want to say anything about your masterclass?
Yes, sign up for that masterclass. This is on redemptive activism. It's this belief in redemption, and that we can find the solution without compromising principles, and we can go forward. So there's some information that any social entrepreneur doing this work, you need this information. So make sure y'all sign up. I promise it's going to be exciting. It's going to be impactful, and you're going to find some stuff you can use in your work and in your personal life.
Is it free?
And it's free.
Really? My master class costs money, so we won't talk about it.
It's so free.
It's free. Wow.
For now.
Say that. That's wonderful.
Well, people can also hear a conversation between the two of you. You were both on the launch of the Stand Together podcast.
Right.
It aired yesterday. So if anyone would like to listen to that episode, you can scan this QR code. And there's also a link in the chat for that one as well. So we're getting ready to close it out. Are there any closing remarks that any of you would like to share?
Yeah, this podcast is good. I mean, today we talked mostly about the Summer of Healing.
Mm-hmm.
The podcast, we talk generally about Heal America, the vision, the rationale, and I think it will supplement what we talked about today. So I recommend it.
Anton, any closing
It's
remarks?
free too, by the way.
Yes, it's free too.
All I would say to everyone out there that opportunities follow action. Just continue putting the action in, and the opportunities will follow. There's some people out there that's waiting on you. Just continue doing the work.
That's great.
Ryan?
I would just say be intentional. Everybody is capable of doing the work, but if you lack the intentionality behind it, then all it is lip service. So be intentional. The only thing that separates us from you is that we've just chosen to be intentional about the work. And so if you choose to be intentional about the work, you can also heal your community as well.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Anything else you want to add?
No, we're out of time.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and thank you all for joining us at home. Have a great day, everyone.
Wonderful.
Take care,
Great
guys.
job.
Thank you.
Brittany is a pro, buddy. Brittany.
With a little bit of help, I just believe that we can inspire a little more people. We can encourage more people, and we can put people in safe spaces and places that they never thought that they could be in.
This is about finding the organizations, and they say this every week in the call, that are already doing the work and giving them support to do the work. I think that's the difference, and I think that's what's going to be the change. It's not finding the next bright, shiny object. It's finding what's working and making it work better.
So if we can help heal these young people who have been in such trauma and lived with such violence, right? Then little by little, we're helping heal this segment of America, then the next segment of America, and then the next.
The biggest thing we're trying to do is help people see the police outside the uniform. Help them see them as the people that's not just serving the community, that's a part of the community, working together, and that bridge being built so that, again, those who felt unseen and those who are trying to serve the unseen are seeing each other as the people they are.
In order to understand the full scope of public safety, to understand what the community involvement and what their role is as well. It's not just law enforcement, but it's also the violence interrupters, it's also the community impact, the community collaborators. It's a conglomerate of all of them involved that makes up public safety.
Being in the trenches, seeing what their experiences are, listening to them, is more powerful than anything that you could ever do in any other position. That's the only way, honestly, things can change, that systems can change, that policies can be created effectively.
We're ready for the healing and working together as a community, one person, one child at a time. We can make it happen.